this video I wanted to approach the idea of sex and what does sex mean and the idea of gender and a little bit past what humans are, because humans, we see our genders and our sexes as binary, and you know, we're kind of like expanding a little bit more. There's a lot more openness when it comes to sexuality and gender and dynamics within relationships. But I wanted to definitely talk about some of the animals that have more than one gender, where like let's open up the conversation with bees, where bees, you have a queen bee, which is the mating bee that creates all the other bees. You have the male bees, which are the drones that impregnate the queen bee, or at least try to, and then they go off and die. And then you have the third one, which is almost genderless, that is the worker bee that protects and takes care of the queen and feeds the larvae in order for and they get to choose whether one becomes a worker or whether one becomes a drone or whether one becomes a queen. So that's just one example of organisms with more than one gender or role or dynamic. And then there's hyenas that you can actually look up, where males and females both have penises, and with males they get erect in the presence of females, and females also get erect in the presence of females. Males because of mating purposes and arousal, females because of comfort and familiarity. With the females have pseudopenises, which are actually elongated clitorises, and it's just amazing the kinds of animals and like the things that you can see in the animal kingdom, especially like this is another thing that's really hilarious. Me and my friend were talking about worms, and then we were very curious. Do worms have sex? What do baby worms look like? So when I looked it up, worms are actually hermaphrodites, and they can't breed with themselves, but when they breed and they have sex with each other, they inseminate each other. So they both get pregnant, and then they both have babies. And it's incredible the things that can be seen in nature, and how humans think that we are just male and female, or there's just so much conversation to be opened up there. And there's no argument here. I'm not going to debate with anyone in the comments about whether it's just male and female or transgender, blah, blah, blah. It's just the facts of the animal kingdom about how certain species have multiple sexes / genders. And then with mushrooms as well. There's a certain species of mushroom, I can't recall of a certain species, but there's a species of mushroom that has 7 different sexes or genders, because mushrooms and fungi don't have the same type of like sexual reproduction as animals and humans, but they do have a type of reproduction that can be like cross-pollinating, but they're not like plants. So this species of mushroom has 7 different sexes, and their alleles, they have particular alleles. One of those 7 genders of these mushrooms can mate with the other 6 of the other alleles, other different types of alleles, but they can't mate with the same type of allele. And then there's also other species where they have multiple genders, but they can only mate with the same type of allele, which is also interesting. There's so much to be learned. There's so much to be, like, the topic of sex and reproduction. There's so many different things that can be done there And there's also corals. They reproduce asexually. There's also organisms that reproduce asexually, and it's a beautiful thing to learn about, that there's not just one way of reproduction. And then there's other ones where, like, if you cut one organism in half, it can just divide into two different organisms, and it's a concept and a fact of different ways of expansion of different types of organisms, and I find it very fascinating. I would love to hear about your guys' concepts and ideas and comments about different animals and species that reproduce in particular ways. I know that there's other animals like the platypus that have different types of chromosomes that aren't X and Y like female and male. There's so many different animals that have their own way of reproduction, and when it comes down to reproduction, it's not just a sexual thing. You find that the less complex animals are, the less it is an act for pleasure. But you'll see animals that are very complex, like dolphins and monkeys and humans, that they'll actually have sex for bonding purposes and connecting and creating familiarity between two different individuals, and they do it for fun. And you'll see with dolphins as well, they'll have homosexual sex. Giraffes will also have homosexual sex, and it's not just a human thing. And I would really like to assist with this topic on breaking away from the taboo of homosexual intercourse, or like different ways of expressing ourselves sexually. And it's such a beautiful process if you were to really think about it, and there's so much to be learned. I really enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed sharing what I do know, and also I will say that there's a lot that I don't know, and I want to open more of a discussion about this, and I want to hear more about what other people know about different species of animals. If we have any biologists or any people who are into mycology that want to share sexuality and scientific facts about sexuality and gender and the way we perceive ourselves within the scope of gender, and if having two human genders is putting us in a box. I'm really excited to see where we go in the future with more scientific research on human gender, and seeing if there is more to be seen. I want to see more scientific research on hermaphrodites, and I want to see, and I don't think it should be taboo. I think it should be openly talked about amongst children learning about sex ed. I think sex ed should be way more detailed than it is. And my mom actually taught me about sex when I was like 8 years old. I think it's a bit young, and there's a bit much there, but yeah, I learned about babies and what that does, and how sperm mixes with an egg and it creates life. And it's a beautiful topic to open up about, and it's a choice. It's a choice for us humans to reproduce or not, because of how much of us there are. And I think it's great. Thank you for watching, You can comment, you can like, do whatever you want. You can follow me on Instagram, Phoenix du Soleil. So grateful and super happy to open a conversation about this.